Movements are simultaneously fire and vomit, hated and romantic. They hold a mythical place in literary culture, but the political and academic baggage that's associated with them makes them only somewhat desirable in today's hyper-individual climate. So along with the social internet of hyper-individuality comes major changes to how a literary movement or aesthetic school can exist. The connections of social media and the net allow for individual branding within any group aesthetic or marketed movement. In this model, every member of a given movement has the force of a movement within themselves, and the meta-movements propel each of the individuals to different demographics and niches. When I surf your sites, I see the marketing power of a movement on every impacting page. Up to this point in netlit culture, the movement has existed primarily as a marketing tool rather than a collective practice. People happen to write similarly enough to be grouped together and then embrace that and possibly homogenize the subconscious if reading and social and cultural overlaps occur often enough. I'm a firm believer in the movement as a marketing tactic, as it has more force than the soloist. The danger in this is entrenchment to please the market, therefore straying from the call and your natural style. Initially, I longed for old school movements, but now it seems that each individual must have the force of a movement in order for the movement to have cultural impact outside of the niche. The way I Love New York continued the windfall of Flavor of Love. If each person strives to thrust aesthetic and formal particulars that help them communicate, over extended periods of time these methods define the movements of each individual. In order for this to be possible, we have to pay attention to each other. Each person is not responsible for clearly defining their movement's focus. Instead, one follows the call and develops the natural aesthetic fostered by their experiences. If we help describe each other's aesthetics and develop new lexicons to describe elements of these aesthetics, we can attack the boring, common words that high school and college students use to describe lit. Updating the lexicon seems pretty important to staying relevant outside the niche, following examples of tweeting and bling bling and the fame monster. Sam Pink's an example of many things. In this case, he's an individual movement that becomes grouped with others after his aesthetic is bloomed, moving from outside to inside. Sam has the power of a movement with his particular brand of association and total overall production. His aesthetic is consistent across poetry, fiction, life, and plays. He's a powerful version of all of us, a singularity. The more people read and relate to his work, the more attractive it becomes to associate him within a group. Sam's aesthetic overlaps could place him in many groups from a marketing standpoint. Sam could be grouped with Chelsea Martin, Barry Graham, Dana Bailey, Jeremy Dean as the Trillists, people who are straight up and take no shit and live firmly. This theoretical grouping could be offered as the punk rock of literary personalities. He's also recently been loosely grouped with Moo Moo House, because his novel Person was such a stark powerhouse and became an influence to members of the group. While Sam would never group himself in such a way, I can see benefits to these aesthetic thrusts. Talon's Moo Moo House is another example of aspects of the meta movement. But in this case, Tao built the movement around ongoing aesthetic similarities. It became a powerful marketing tool for promoting the work of people he believed in while fostering diverse aesthetic crafting such as Noah Cicero and Brandon Scott Roll. By naming people involved with the collective, Tao simultaneously fostered diverse aesthetic while solidifying his own style by including those he related to through similar stylings. This brings us two distinct sets of meta-movements and how they can form. There are subtle differences in how forming a meta-movement from the inside and forming one from the outside will manifest. For example, a meta-movement grouped from inside is likely to have more of a social grouping focus rather than an aesthetic one, offering a personal bond instead of formal similarities. Both seem to have purpose in contemporary American culture, creating easily accessible framework of movements and groups can act as a gateway drug to the individual movements beyond the pretty curtain, letting an individual feel literary social involvement. I've I've always believed in teams, runs batted in, assists. I'm desperate to stand beside you while you gently destroy the fabric. Bo knows teamwork. Bo Jackson, the meta-athlete, more powerful as Bo than just a royal or raider. That powerful wing makes such an astonishing sound, and all the things it moves together. Certainly a strange time. Netlit is poised to break through the niche and into popular culture. There's a place for us. It's between the jester and the revolutionary. Our firepower is daily life, the rattles and bear traps. And the methods we employ will be like none other, because we have a crippling cannon to overcome and common attitudes to infiltrate. But the time is right. We're partying inside a volcano.